Hi, everybody. We good? Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We haven't done this virtual Mayor's Night Out. Give me 2 seconds. I'm trying to catch up here. We haven't had a virtual Mayor's Night Out since the pandemic. We got used to doing this during the pandemic, so thank you, everybody, for listening. We have a couple hundred people. This is going to be stored, archived on Go Hammond TV. Is that true, guys? This will be archived on Go Hammond TV. Obviously, it's going to stay on Facebook Live. I wanted to talk about yesterday's school board decision and answer any questions Hammond residents have. It's sort of shocking that I'm having this press conference, but it's only because we're reacting to the Hammond public calling the mayor's office this morning, angry public calling my staff of the Civil City, telling us how angry they were at the School City's decision, asking what the mayor was going to do about it. And, you know, that's why we're here, to talk about what's going on. So I wanted to start off and explain to everybody Indiana law real quickly, so we understand legally where I stand as mayor, all right? The School City of Hammond and the Civil City of Hammond are separate government entities. I'm gonna let that sink in, and I'm gonna say it again. The School City of Hammond and the Civil City of Hammond are separate legal entities under the law. I am the mayor, and everybody pictures the mayor being the all-powerful one in the city, and I do have a lot of power, but I don't have power over the schools. That's set up that way under Indiana law. I don't have the power over the libraries either. There's county government offices in Hammond I don't have responsibility for either. There's things that I'm responsible for. It's mostly the police and fire, economic development, public safety, things of that nature. Schools aren't one of them. So obviously I'm aware of what's going on in our city. I know the school superintendent very well. I know the members of the school board well. I'm aware of what's going on in the city because I'm the mayor. And obviously there's been a lot of talk about what was going to happen last night with the school board decision. So I want to start off and say, I've been mayor for 20 years, and when I first took over as mayor, there was fear that I was going to, quote unquote, take over the school city. This was 20 years ago when I first became mayor. Now, the reason that fear was on the street at that time, guys, could you, it's like distracting, I'm sorry. The reason at the time I came out that way, the fears were on the street, is because I campaigned hard when I first ran for mayor on the schools. I said people are moving out of Hammond because of the schools. We need to do something about it. And the people in the school city didn't appreciate my campaign and the way I campaigned. So when I became mayor in 2004, there was literal tension between Civil City and the school city governments, all right? There was tension, there was fear. They thought that I was gonna make a move downstate to try to take over the schools, and it never happened, because I wasn't interested in that, because I have my hands full as mayor, and if I did want to take over the schools, it's not up to me. It's up to the governor, it's up to the General Assembly, and that's a whole matter on its own. So over the last 20 years as mayor, I've of course had a good relationship with the schools. I try to cooperate with the schools whenever possible. We do things that complement the schools, like the college-bound scholarship program, but we're not responsible for the schools. I'm not responsible for what happens across the street at Hammond Central. I'm not responsible for what happens at Kenwood, at Hess, at Franklin, at Scott Middle School, none of them. They're under the control of the Hammond School Board and the Hammond Superintendent, period. That's it, that's okay. Obviously, as mayor, I'm the leader of the community, and I care about what's going on, and the residents are my bosses, and they're concerned about what's going on with their superintendent and school board, excuse me. Hammond residents vote for the school board, by the way. Those 5 people on the Hammond school board weren't put there by anybody except for the people watching this right now. The voters of Hammond elected those 5 people, and they are making decisions on our behalf right now. Now, over the last 20 years, I could tell you before Superintendent Miller took over, it was commonly known by almost every resident of the city of Hammond that we had too many high schools in Hammond. 20 years ago, nothing was done about it, but it was just a common acknowledgement. Hammond, a city of 80,000 people, doesn't need 6 public high schools. Excuse me, 5 public high schools and a private high school. We had 6 high schools in Hammond. You know, that was 20 years ago. Obviously, when Superintendent Miller took over, 6 or 7 years ago, I don't remember when he came in, he consolidated our high schools. We passed an operating referendum 7 years ago, and we passed a capital referendum 7 years ago that built Hammond Central across the street, consolidated schools, 4 public high schools consolidated down to 2. We still have, so we have those 2, Morton, Hammond Central. We still have Hast, which is a charter school that I started, I acknowledge, in downtown Hammond. We have Hast in downtown Hammond, and we have Bishop Knoll, which is thriving, by the way. So Hammond, a city of 80,000, has 4 public high schools right now. That's what we have currently in 2024. Yesterday, the School City of Hammond made a decision to shut down 3 elementary schools. To shut down Kenwood Elementary School, they shut down Wallace Elementary School, and they shut down Morton Elementary School, thank you. It's obviously Morton Elementary School is closest to my house. Kenwood's a school that's famous in the city of Hammond. A lot of notable Hammond residents have gone to Kenwood Elementary School. Wallace, right down the street from City Hall, beautiful high school. I visit it every year. These are tough decisions that the school city made. Hammond School Board made that decision, and it's not like they're doing it in a vacuum. Where is this all coming from? I've never met a school superintendent or a school board that said, I want less money. Haven't met them. I've never met that in Hammond, and I've never met that in a Hammond superintendent. What's happening that we all have to understand is mandates are coming from Indianapolis that affect us. One's called the tax caps. The other is this whole concept of referendums. We never used to have referendums because we funded our own education in Hammond. That was taken over by the state of Indiana, and now we have to decide what level of education we want to fund through referendums. 7 years ago, Hammond voters had 2 referendums facing them. Hammond Central referendum, it passed. The operating referendum, which goes to teachers, passed. Teachers were hired on the referendum for the operating. Hammond Central referendum passed, and the school was built. Now, 7 years later, the operating referendum comes up again. Why we need to renew this, I'm not sure. The state of Indiana requires this. So 7 years later, operating referendum comes back to the citizens of Hammond. I put a sign out in my front yard. I had my whole family vote for this. I talked about it publicly, as I know a lot of other people did. But the appetite in the Hammond public wasn't there to pass that referendum. And it failed. It failed soundly, by the way. It was like 30-70. It wasn't even close. I had a sign in my yard. I publicly campaigned because I knew if this doesn't pass, there's going to be hell to pay. Schools are going to have to shut down. If we don't have money in the Hammond schools, we only have to look to our neighbor to the east to see what happened when their schools ran out of money. The city of Gary ran out of money 5 or 6 years ago, and the state of Indiana took over Gary schools. It's called the Distress Unit Appeals Board. They come in, they get rid of all union contracts, they get rid of all vendor contracts, they close buildings, they fire people, and they don't give a crap about Hammond residents, or Gary residents in that case. Why? They're not from here. They live in Indy, or Noblesville, or Elkhart. And they come into Hammond, and they close our schools, and they lay off our teachers, and they shut down our schools. Why? Because we didn't pass a referendum. We had a chance to pass this referendum in Hammond, and it failed. Distress Unit Appeal Board is breathing down the school board's neck. I knew on the day that referendum failed, this day was going to come, and it's here. And the schools are getting shut down, and people are pissed. And I get it. But we have to understand where the pressure is coming from. I personally know Scott Miller. I think Scott Miller is a fine person. He's a smart person. He's a nice person. He's a teacher. He's a teacher. He was a teacher at the ACC. And now he's this evil person that wants to shut down schools and screw over teachers. No. This is coming from the state of Indiana. We have no choice. We had a choice in Hammond. If we passed that referendum, the operating referendum, we wouldn't be doing today. The school board yesterday wouldn't have shut down those schools. We didn't in Hammond. That's the voters' will. The school board did what it had to do yesterday. It sucks. I don't agree with it. I think that cities like Hammond should have more spent on education. A lot more. The state of Indiana doesn't agree, and they fund our schools. You know, a lot of people move to Hammond from Illinois, and they're perplexed. What's going on here? I like the low taxes, but I want teachers, and I want schools. You came to the wrong state. This state doesn't value public education, and that's a fact. Indiana does not value public education. Indiana wants those things to go out of business, and it's happening. That's a fact. That's how I feel. So anyway, this morning I came to work, and we had a number of angry phone calls waiting for me, and I personally heard my assistants getting yelled at by residents that were angry over our decision. What are you going to do, Mayor? What are you going to do to keep our schools open, Mayor? And that is beyond frustrating, to hear my staff get yelled at for something we have absolutely nothing to do with. is frustrating for any mayor to hear people cursing at us, threatening us, telling me I'm lining my pockets is absurd, stupid, and that's the kind of stuff that goes on in Washington, D.C. I don't want that going on in Hammond. So we need to educate ourselves. So I'm making myself available. I'm standing here. I want to thank the Hammond City Council for letting me use their chambers. I'm here. I'm going to answer questions on Facebook Live, and I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to tell you exactly what I know, exactly what I've heard, and you can't blame me. I'm telling you something I've been told as mayor, and the decision makers are the 5 members of the Hammond School Board. Period. The mayor is not a decision maker in this. The Hammond Council is not a decision maker in this. The 5 Hammond School Board members that we in Hammond elected are the ones making this decision. So please, don't yell at my staff. It doesn't make any sense, and it makes the caller look ridiculous because we have no power over this issue. So stop yelling at us, please, and ask questions. I'm going to put them in the comments, and I will answer them as best I can. And if I appear frustrated, I am. I apologize. But this has been a long day. I don't know how often you get accused, ridiculed, threatened, cursed at over something you have zero control over, but that's been my day so far. So I've made myself available. We have a lot of people. How many people we have watching now? 516 people watching. And this is going to be watched thousands of times. So let's have a good conversation about what's really going on, okay? Who's going to ask?
I've got the first question.
All right.
This is from Summer from Facebook.
Okay.
Hello, I currently have a 3rd grader in the public school system here. I am interested in your thoughts on what can be done to improve our school situation. How can you bring more working class families to our region with overcrowded and underperforming schools?
Agreed. I think this is Tom talking. Okay? I think that there's people in Indianapolis that want to see our school systems fail. That not just Hammond, public education fail. There's people that are determined to make that happen. So they're doing things like flourishing charter schools across the area. And I opened one myself, okay? And it's doing great and I'm proud of it, okay? But charter schools are threatening to the school cities. Vouchers. I think the voucher program's great, personally, because I know people that use it, and they go to great schools like Bishop Noel, Andrean, any other Catholic institution. I think they're great. However, they are threatening the School City of Hammond and all the school cities because that's money that used to go to the schools. Now it's going to a religious school. So places like Bishop Noel and Andrean are thriving. Catholic schools are thriving because they're getting all this money from the vouchers coming into them. But that money used to go to the School City of Hammond, and it's not there anymore. So until we get a governor and a General Assembly that cares about public education, this is not going away. I don't want to be depressing, but let's just be honest. You want me to lie to you? I'm not going to. This isn't going to get better. The state of Indiana has made an enemy out of public education. And now we're eating our own here. The teachers are going after superintendents, school board members are going after everybody. What's the common problem? Money. It's been cut off from the source, Indianapolis. And now everybody's fighting. But the problem is the money is cut off. How could a city like Hammond, one of the poorest cities in the state of Indiana, be one that's laying off teachers? How can that be? It's not right. It's not proper. I don't hear any of the governor candidates talking about it, the ones that are going to win. They're not talking about it. They're talking about, oh, we need more counselors. Yeah, we need more counselors, but we need more teachers too. We don't need counselors, Suzanne Crouch. We need teachers. Not counselors, teachers. I love counselors, by the way. But we need teachers too. We can't, some of our cities and towns are passing referendums and thriving. But cities like Hammond, because our voters said, no, we don't want the referendum, sorry, we're laying off our teachers and shutting down our schools. I don't know what to say to the person that asked the question, Summer, I believe you said. I'm sorry, I'm animated. I don't think this is getting better. I just don't. I think this is going to get worse. And none of the governor candidates that are going to win are talking about this. They're not talking about this. They're talking about stupid stuff, like programming your kids in school. That's what they're talking about in school. Don't let your kids get programmed by your teachers. Nobody's programming anybody. We're trying to teach kids, and we're having to shut down schools and lay off teachers. Hi.
Hi. Mandy from Facebook said, when will Hammond stop allowing Holcomb to praise charters and send funding there instead of to our public schools?
I know. Great question, Manny. Holcomb, he's talking about Governor Holcomb praising charters. I have trouble. My charter school experience personally, when I opened HASS, I opened it with the chancellor at Purdue Northwest. At the time we did that, my relationship with the School City of Hammond was about as low as it could be. And people were leaving the city, and I had nothing to offer them. They'd say, sorry, Mayor, I'm moving to Highland, or I'm moving to Munster. And I'd say, why? And they'd say, schools, I can't handle it anymore. And I'd say, why don't you send your kid to Bishop Knoll? And they'd say, because it costs $10,000, and I don't have $10,000. And I would have no answer. Then we opened up the Hammond Academy of Science and Technology. I partnered with Purdue Northwest. We opened this school, we catered to education, and it's thriving. It has a B. But I acknowledge that takes around 600 students out of School City Hammond. They're going to a great school in Hammond, getting B from the state of Indiana, which is the highest grade we've had on any school in a long time, but that's 600 kids that aren't part of the School City Hammond anymore. My argument to that is, if I didn't do that, those 600 people would have moved out of Hammond, and we'd be 600 families shorter. So we did what we had to do. So it's hard for me to criticize Governor Holcomb over charter schools when I have one of those notches under my belt myself. So.
Fabian from Facebook, since SCH is mismanaged, is it possible to expand schools like HAST within the community?
Great question. It is possible, and there is pressure on me to do these things. But if I did take that action, which the recommendation was, HAST is doing well, the School City Hammond isn't, why don't you, Mayor, increased HAST and make it, instead of 600, increase maybe HAST 2.0 opens up, and we do high school, we do elementary school. So I have pressure on myself to do that. HAST is interested in doing that, and at the same time, I also realize if we did that, it would make it much harder for the School City Hammond to continue to operate. So that's a push and pull that we're still debating. So great question, though. Thank you.
Christina from Facebook said, where do we turn from here? What about our children's learning they're the only ones that are being punished? Our children should be the number one, not because of money, but because they're handling everything poorly. That's not our fault.
I agree with you. It sucks. But, you know, I do still think that we're going to have great quality teachers. The thing that stinks right now, we're in a process where teachers are losing their jobs and buildings are being closed. And it's going to be rough through this whole summer. And then next school year, hopefully, when everybody gets back to normal and all the new teachers are in their new classrooms and all the new students are in their new classrooms and people realize that they got a great teacher and they're in a new building, but it's still a good building. And I'm hoping that that settles down. But I also want to point out that I'm not the school board member, I'm not the superintendent, that these aren't under my control. These are just my wishes as mayor. I hope that's what happens. I hope that's what happens. I'm not in charge of making sure that does happen, but I hope that happens. Hi.
Hello. Let's see.
By the way, we have 706 people watching right now. That's like pretty high. Pandemic, we had more, but that was a pandemic. So this is obviously an important topic.
Okay, so the question is, why is it even the mayor's responsibility to answer questions about a decision that the school board decided?
I love that question. It's my favorite question. Are you hearing the questions all right? Why is it my responsibility to even get on TV right now and address this? I think it's, first off, we didn't have much of a choice when we got to work this morning, right? The residents were deciding for us that this was an issue the mayor needed to pay attention to immediately, and I'm a responsive mayor. Secondly, I felt my staff was getting abused, and I never liked that. Third, I'm a mayor, I'm the leader of the community. Even though I'm not in charge of the schools, the people that are concerned about what's going on with the schools are my boss. So I want to tell them what I know, and I'm just trying to do the best I can to communicate what I know. And I'm willing to say anything that I know. And I am not a decision maker, but I'll tell you what I know. Okay? I think is a good opportunity to clear the air so that maybe I could calm things down. That's what I'm trying to do. But people are going to be mad all summer. There's 3 school buildings getting shut down. There's teachers and custodians and other staff losing their job. It's happening. There's nothing we could do about that. Okay? There's nothing we could do about that. I'm hoping to calm the situation down. I'm an outsider, although I'm the mayor, but I am an outsider on this. And, you know, that's what I'm trying to do.
Carlos asks, if the city of Hammond is not involved with the School City of Hammond or the current issue, then why was there Hammond City Police at the School City of Hammond town meeting with metal detectors if a dialogue between parents, teachers, custodians, and concerned residents?
Okay. I'm not even aware of that personally, but our officers do work side jobs. And those officers, if they were in that building, were working a side job, which means that the School City of Hammond hired them. for security purposes. I don't supervise officers' side jobs. If an officer works a side job, they could be at the Festival of Lakes, they could be working at the Sportsplex, they could be working at School City of Hammond, they could be working in a courtroom. I don't know. But if you saw police officers at that meeting, it's because they were requested to be there by the School City of Hammond.
Shannon said, where's the empathy for the community?
I have empathy. I'm here. I don't know. I'm very empathetic about what's going on. Absolutely. But I'm also a matter of fact. The fact is, if we passed our referendum, by the way, during that referendum, I had a School City of Hammond, I support my teachers in my yard, and I had a referendum, I support the referendum in my yard, and I was getting insulted because it was so unpopular. But I knew if this referendum fails, how screwed the School City of Hammond would be, and that we would probably end up getting taken over by the state of Indiana. So as a mayor, I was like, I have to support this. And I did. And I campaigned for it. I went on the radio. I did everything I could to help that pass, and it was a losing effort from the get-go. Hammond residents were not interested in passing that referendum, and it failed. So here we are. The referendum failed. We have no money. The school board made the decision they did. People are losing their jobs. I don't know, I mean, I'm being as empathetic as possible. I'm not trying to be a smartass either, but like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm just trying to tell you what's going on. I mean, I'm not gonna cry about this or anything, but like, I'm just trying to explain what's going on.
All right, next question. Is there an option in the future where you would have input in the school city? Can the state give you this power?
Yes, the state can give me this power, period. It would have to be a bill floated by the General Assembly. That's true, right? It would have to be a bill floated by a state representative that asked the state of Indiana, House, Senate, and Governor to change the Indiana code so that the School City of Hammond had a mayoral input. I don't know what that means. I know that the Mayor Gary has input on the school board. Mayor Hammond does not. I have zero input, none. And that's because there was a lot of fear 20 years ago that I was gonna try to do this, so I just stayed out of it and let the schools run the schools. And I ran the city, and by the way, I'm not complaining. The city's super busy. I'm busy all the time. I got police and fire. Police budget's $35 million, and there's 168 police officers. Fire department budget's like $25 million, there's 155 of them. I have 1,000 employees, $150 million budget. I'm not complaining that I'm not in charge of the schools. The schools are hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of employees also. If I had that responsibility, I would do it. I don't. So when people say, what are you gonna do? What do you want me to do? Want me to go yell at somebody? I'll go yell at somebody, but it's not gonna result in anything. I'll yell at anybody. Hey, don't do that. And then they'll do it because I'm not their boss.
Next question. Why do you think more wealthy areas pass referendums all the time and urban areas seem to reject them?
That's a problem. Great question, and a problem. And what it's going to result in, if we keep this dumb policy up in the state of Indiana of funding education by referendum, what it's going to result in is the difference between the rich and the poor is going to be striking in the schools. Look, you go to, I'm not going to slam on another region community. There's a region community, you go there and they have a big screen football board. So you can watch all their football plays in slow motion. And other cities are laying off teachers. That's Indiana education. Whether you want to admit it or not, Governor, or any other future governor, that's Indiana right now. I can go to Hobart and watch a high school football game on a big screen, Jumbotron, and I go to Gary and they have one high school. And Hammond is shutting down. It's like, that's Indiana. That's Indiana education. Whether you want to admit it or not, governor candidates and governor, that's Indiana education. That's what we've created. A difference between the rich and the poor is straight up. So if you live in a city like Hammond and you have the means to do so, you'll probably send your kids to an expensive education that doesn't, or you'll move out. So the future for cities like Hammond under this system is not as bright as it is if you're in Carmel or Valparaiso, where everybody's rich, and you say referendum, they're like, yeah, I want another Jumbotron. It's a dumb policy. Nobody's talking about it. The lieutenant governor's talking about, we need, our schools, that's what they really need is more mental health. God bless more mental health, but our school, that is not our biggest problem in schools, Lieutenant Governor. And she's running for governor. And if she gets elected, she's not gonna fix it. She doesn't care about the problem. In fact, yeah, never mind.
Let's see. Okay. Let's see.
How we doing?
Good.
If people get bored, then we'll shut it down.
Yeah,
When
I've
people
got a
get bored.
question. Can you please provide the resources or persons or entities that we can reach out to who do govern the school board? Contact information and resources would be greatly appreciated.
Sure. Let's go through their names. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not going to give you their cell phone number. Okay. We have school board members in the city of Hammond. Help me out. Carlotta Blake King, school board member in the city of Hammond. We have Lisa Miller, school board member in the city of Hammond. Cindy Murphy, she's a school board member in the city of Hammond. We have Manny Candelaria, school board member in the city of Hammond. And we have Lisa, right. I'm blanking on the fourth. Right. So those are our school board members. We have 2 school board members running in November. And I suggest you go out and vote for who you think is going to represent you best.
Okay. Lily asks.
Kelly is the school board. Kelly Spencer, thank you. Yes.
Okay. Lily said, so how do we ensure that the residents are informed? You may not have decision-making powers, but doesn't the city of Hammond have a civil duty to make sure your residents are being taken care of and are properly informed, especially if you are frustrated by citizens who are ill-informed? There's obviously a disconnect.
That's what I'm doing. That's a perfect question, and my response is what I'm doing right now, so thank you.
The SCH in 2022 received $87 million from the state. Is that not enough? What about TIF districts? Will you consider halting new TIF districts?
TIF districts have nothing to do with this, okay? I think that there's people that have an agenda against TIF districts, and they're trying to throw it in here to get people fired up. It's a dumb argument about TIF districts, all due respect, okay? The money that you're talking about from the federal government was earmarked. I'm not sure how the school city used their money. I don't believe they got that much either. City of Hammond got $54 million from the federal government during the pandemic. What was that program called? American Rescue Act, thank you. All communities throughout the region got it, including schools. Hammond School City got an amount that was similar to us. I want to say it might have been a little bit less than us. Do you remember? It was about the same, I know. And then Gary got like 100 million. I know Gary Schools got like 80 million. I thought Hammond Schools only got like 40, but I'm not in charge of the School City of Hammond, so I don't know off the top of my head. But the money we got during the pandemic was very, very restricted. Like in Hammond, it was easy for us because it was capital projects, and we have plenty of capital projects to fund. So for us, we could use it easy. I'm not sure what kind of stipulations were on the American Rescue Act money that went to the schools, so.
Ruben said, any federal grants or programs can the city of Hammond apply for?
There's all kinds of grants, but this is the job of the school city is, and quite frankly, they have people that work for them that specialize, and I have no idea, anything about that, quite frankly. We go for grants to help fund infrastructure projects. To fund education projects is a totally different expertise that I haven't had to do in 20 years, so.
Did you think that the state is set up to not help school systems that are predominantly black and brown students? What would you do to fix it if you could?
All due respect to, I live in a city that's very diverse, and there's obviously a high number of African Americans and Hispanics and Caucasian people that live here. I think that the one common characteristic we all have in Hammond is it's not a wealthy community. So I don't really like to get into the demographics as much as I think that Indiana discriminates against poor communities like Hammond. How about that? And I think Indiana discriminates against poor communities like Gary and East Chicago and South Bend and Fort Wayne. And so I don't think it's a war on young African-American kids. I hope it's not. I wouldn't, but I think it's a war on public education. And unfortunately, in poorer cities like Hammond, we rely a lot more on our public education system. I have a question before I'll interrupt you guys. How could the city afford acts like Little Wayne and the schools are laying off teachers? I got this like 4 times today. Festival of Lakes, We do get great acts. It's wonderful. The money we use in the Festival of Lakes is completely segregated and separated from the School City of Hammond. We're separate units of government. We don't share monies at all. Totally separate accounts, totally separate banks, totally separate policies, totally separate bosses. If we did bring in an act like Lil Wayne, we did. And we made hundreds of thousands of dollars that night when we brought in Lil Wayne, because we had 15,000 people buy tickets for that night. And then we used that money to help fund other acts at the Festival of Lakes. We can't take that money and send it to schools. Well, I guess we could, but it wouldn't be smart because we have our own problems to fund on this side of the fence. We have more need than money, so.
Okay. Why do you think the charter schools and private schools are thriving? What's the difference? Most of the kids are still from Hammond. The buildings at a lot of these Catholic schools are terrible, but the kids are thriving.
I don't think, first off, I'm super happy that we have Hast and Bishop Noel in Hammond. And I do want to point that out for Hammond residents. We have Hast and Bishop Noel in Hammond, okay? If you're upset or frustrated, there are programs. You can go to Hast. I know there's a waiting list because it's an excellent school, so it has a waiting list. And Bishop Noel, you can go there on a voucher. And vouchers are available. Almost every Hammond resident qualifies for a voucher, okay? When I bring up charter schools and Catholic schools into this conversation, the only reason I do so is because every student that goes there is a lost revenue for the school cities, okay? So if my kid goes to Bishop Noel, my kid could have gone to, well, I was going to say Gavitt because that was in our school, but my kid could have gone to Morton, my kid could have gone to Hammond Central. Instead, if you send your kid to Bishop Noel, that money follows your kid to Bishop Noel, not to Hammond Central, not to Morton. And that lost revenue, which is like $10,000 a student, is $10,000 less that the school city used to get automatically. Back in the old days when I first took over, all the kids in Hammond would have to go to the Hammond schools, and they would just take all that $10,000 tuition and they would fund their government with it. Now that you have charters, kids are going there and taking their money with them. With vouchers, kids are going to other schools and taking their money with them. And now it's like the school cities are starving and they don't have the money.
Why is the City of Hammond and the School City of Hammond separate? Why is School City of Hammond a company? School city, it's a government entity, okay? But it's separated by state law. And most of the cities are set up that way, quite frankly. There's a few cities not set up that way. I know Valparaiso was set up so the mayor and the city council had input on the schools. I know Gary, after it comes out of DUAB, the mayor is gonna have inputs on the schools in Gary. In Hammond, just always been this way. The mayor has zero input. That's the way it's always been. And quite frankly, when I first took over as mayor 20 years ago, if you had asked the school city if they wanted Tom McDermott to have any input, they would have told you, hell no. We want him nowhere near 41 William Street 20 years ago. Now, 20 years later, I'm being screamed at because I'm not doing anything about the schools. It's an impossible situation.
Did school board members and the teachers union support or oppose the referendum? If they didn't, why not?
You're gonna get me in trouble.
Wouldn't supporting it prevent exactly what's happening right now?
I just decided to, listen, I understand how government works, I understand how elections work, okay? And I've worked with unions, I've done so for the past 25 years. During elections, I see how unions work, okay? And all I could say is when our referendum was on the line, we needed everybody rowing in the same direction, and they weren't. I didn't see a lot of, all due respect, okay? I didn't see a lot of union members pushing hard for the referendum. I didn't see a lot of teachers pushing hard for referendum. I didn't see residents, of course, pushing hard for referendum. There was just a few people pushing for the referendum. I was one of them, and it was a nightmare. And I knew that if this referendum doesn't pass, I knew, here comes the state, DUAB is coming, and when they do, they're gonna fire everybody on the school board, they're gonna fire the superintendent, they're gonna fire everybody. That's what they did in Gary, and they're gonna do it here too. So I knew, Mayor Tom, you better support this referendum, because if not, DUAB is gonna take over your school city. And we shot it down. We, the collective we, Hammond residents stomped that thing into defeat. Don't be shocked. That was our choice. We made a decision. You can't come back and start bitching now because you don't like the result. We voted it down 70-30, starving the school city of 7 years of funding. And you're shocked? You're shocked? What? What? We gotta shut down schools now? Yes. Yes. That's why we had the referendum. That's why. So that we didn't have to shut down schools. But we said, screw off. Guess what? We're not the federal government. We don't get to start printing money and say everything's going to be fine. We have to shut it down. I'm not saying I had nothing to do with that decision. Okay? School board. But we shot it down. Us, the people watching right now, we shut it down, 70-30. And they have to shut down schools. This is not shocking to me. It's shocking that I'm getting screamed at for it. That's shocking to me. It's not shocking what the school board did last night. They have no choice. Shocking that I'm getting blamed for it. I supported the referendum. I voted for it. I campaigned for it.
Why is our city's schools run by a business? That's not local. Civic and public offices should be handling our schools. We need a complete restructuring of this to avoid future misappropriation of funding.
I have no idea what that's just talking about. The School City of Hammond, from what I see, is run by 5 members of the school board. I mentioned them earlier. Kelly Clark Spencer, Lisa Miller, Cindy Murphy, Manny Candelaria, and Carlotta Blake King. Those 5 Hammond residents run the School City of Hammond, and they hired Scott Miller, who is the superintendent of schools. Those 5 hired Scott Miller. Scott Miller and those 5 run the schools. That's what I see. I'm the mayor. I usually see things that are accurate. I have no idea what they're talking about. Some company is mysteriously running the school city.
We are out of questions.
We're out of questions?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Whoa. I'm not going to cry about this. I wanted to come on and answer all your questions, make myself available. I want to make sure I cover everything I wanted to cover. I covered my history with the school city, HAST. I built it. I did, the charter school. Hammond Academy of Science and Technology. My name is on the front door. Okay? I'm proud of it too. 600 students go there. We got ranked a B by the state of Indiana. It's a wonderful school. Okay? I wanted to point that out. I did start that school. 6 public high schools in a city of 80,000 people, which is what we had 20 years ago, is insanely overpopulated, insanely amount of over-government, okay? We all knew for years and years that we had to do that. Scott Miller took over as superintendent, made tough decisions, and we ended up with Hammond Central, and I think it's a gorgeous place. College Bound helps Hammond schools tremendously. We fund that every year to the tune of $4 million to fund Hammond students to go to college. I think that helps the schools a lot. Capital referendums, they suck, but operating referendums are insane. I don't know what to say. When I have to do a sanitary project and it's going to cost $100 million, I don't have to go to the voters and say, hey, voters, is it okay if I do this $100 million project? I don't have to do that because in sanitary district, we have to do those projects. The federal government is mandating us to do those projects. So they don't give the voters a choice. They say, Mayor, you got to do this. And it's either do it or have the Department of Justice mad at me. And I don't really feel like having the Department of Justice mad at me. So we do it. But I have a feeling if I had a $100 million sanitary district project and I went to the voters and I said, voters, what do you think about me doing this $100 million sanitary district project? They'd say, don't do it. And I'd say, okay, sorry, Department of Justice. We're going to continue dumping poop in Lake Michigan because my voters don't want to pay for this. So they don't give voters a choice when it comes to huge sanitary district projects. You just do them, right? But when it comes to schools, we're going to leave it to the voters. There's some voters that don't want to fund education because they don't have kids. So they vote no. This state is not being run correctly when it comes to education. That's my view. I'm a mayor 21 years, take it or leave it, okay? But what's going on and what's broken in Indianapolis is affecting us right now in Hammond, and it's sad. And I'm sad as the mayor. I'm sorry to the members of the community thinking I'm failing you because I'm not kicking and screaming about this, but I just wanted to make myself clear and where we stand. Do we have any other questions left?
No.
Anybody in the audience? Thank you. I would definitely not miss school board meetings. Isn't there a meeting tonight with the school board? I know there was one last night. For some reason, I thought there was something at the library tonight, but plug into the school city and find out what's going on and take your anger to the right place. You know, if I did something stupid in the city, I wouldn't want you calling the school board staff and yelling at them. If I do something stupid, just yell at me. So it's frustrating for me when I see my staff getting beat up. And when I'm getting beat up, I don't think it's fair. And I see that stuff going on in Washington, D.C., and I just don't want Hammond to be like that. So if we don't have anything further, yeah.
Is it
thank you. Is it possible to get the referendum on the ballot again? I think it's probable that it's going to happen. And that's a great question. I don't understand why that's not being discussed, but I'm not in charge of that, as you know. But I think that it's imperative that they get a referendum on the ballot, or else there may be more closures. And by the way, nobody really asked me about the rumors I'm hearing. I'm hearing a lot worse than what happened last night. I'm hearing a lot worse than that, okay? Like, I don't think they're done cutting. They may be done cutting this year, but if we don't fix the funding problem, next year it may be Morton High School, okay? I'm not trying to scare anybody, but like, you need to pay attention to what's going on in the school board, in the school city. Also pay attention to what's going on in the state of Indiana, and listen to these people running for governor right now, and ask them what they're gonna do about the schools, because that's who's funding our schools, or more correctly, who's not funding our schools, state of Indiana. So if we don't have anything further, I do wanna say thank you to the over 800 residents that watched live, the thousands of people that are gonna listen to this. I'm sorry that I cursed a couple times. I'm just extremely frustrated today. It's a sad day in the city of Hammond, and there's a lot of people failing in government right now, and I hope I'm not one of them. I'm trying not to be, but there's a lot of fail going on across the state of Indiana when it comes to education, and it's affecting us here in Hammond. So without further ado, I just want to say.
One more thing. It
Sure.
looks like there is a meeting tonight at the library at 6 p.m.
Meeting 6 p.m. at the library tonight. Do you know what it's about, or?
It's just, I'm reading the comments. It says if you're interested in running for a school board. We're getting candidates to run for school board. Yeah, sounds like you want to go to the Hammond Library tonight at 6 p.m. If you're interested in running for school board. The election's in November, and I've watched the school board operate over the last couple years, and it's extremely concerning, the level of dysfunction on that school board. It's extremely concerning for me as mayor. I fight with members of the council all the time, but I've never seen the complete and utter breakdown of communication like I've seen on the Hammond School Board. It's embarrassing as the mayor, to be honest with you. And I know a number of these people. I consider them friends. I consider them people trying to do the right thing, but it's embarrassing what's going on between the 5 Hammond School Board members. It's absolutely mortifyingly embarrassing. It's bad for business, and they need to get their stuff together. Because quite frankly, when the state comes in, if they come in, all 5 of them are gonna be fired on the spot. And so is Superintendent Miller, and it'll be like that for close to 10 years, where the state is in complete control. And the residents that are upset right now, you won't get to talk to us, you won't get to talk to the school board members, you have to talk to the bureaucrats from Indianapolis to get things done in your school. And all you have to do is look at what happened in Gary. That's all you have to do. This is gonna happen here if we don't get our stuff together. Is that it? Thank you, everybody, for listening to this virtual Mayor's Night Out. We only do them in times of emergency, and we figured today was definitely one of those. Thank you all. Nice to see you. This is Hammond Mayor McDermott from the city of Hammond, signing out. Thanks, everybody.